we can manage the stress that we're experiencing, whether it's because of past trauma or chronic stress, so that we can mitigate the detrimental effects that we've been talking about in this series. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the giants in the world of trauma informed treatment, talks about the fact that, put very simply, the strategy for people who've experienced a lot of trauma and are emotionally dysregulated is to learn ways to calm yourself down, learn ways to calm your body down and your mind down. And then once you've practiced those ways and have them very well in your array of skills, then you can apply them when you're having stressful reactions, and practice and practice and practice. So we're going to talk about a lot of different ways to do that. So we're going to get going. Okay, so again, I want to just do a little bit of review. We've been talking in this series about the impact of stress on our brains, our bodies, and how it affects the lens through which we view the world. When cortisol is rising in the body, when we're feeling triggered by something, we begin to move to fight, flight, or freeze. We move from our natural state of seeking connection with human beings to seeking protection from human beings. And it's really important that we know that when somebody has experienced ongoing chronic stress or trauma, that they're in a state of waiting for the next shoe to drop. If things are going well, that's a trigger because something is going to go wrong. I'm going to have a flashback. I'm going to lose control of my emotions. So it's really a tough way to live. We've talked about the ACE study and the prevalence of stress in our general population, and about how common it is for people to have experienced one or more ACEs or adverse childhood experiences. So being attuned to stress and helping people with stress is a great skill, because many of us are dealing with it, children and adults. Again, we're going to talk about emotional regulation and how to regulate our bodies and brains. When we are well regulated, we can be attuned. We can really be empathetic to people, our fellow staff, our children, our families, our students. We can respond effectively because we're in good, calm, well-regulated states. We can solve problems. And in our schools and in our lives, we want to have traditions and values and norms that are aligned with it. So, for example, we don't have punitive cultures. We don't have a lot of changes. We have predictability. We have stability. We have consistency, all things that help human beings with trauma. And again, I said this quote from Ryan North, but I like it a lot. Our brains are wired for connection. Human beings seek social connection, but when trauma rewires them for protection. That's why healthy relationships are very difficult for wounded people. They're so on edge about when something bad is going to happen. When will the trauma revisit? So one of the ways that we can be effective, the most effective in not suffering from chronic stress and mitigating the detrimental effects on our brains and bodies, is by putting the awareness into action and making a plan. But before we talk about that, I'm going to ask us to consider when we first learned to regulate, who is our first teacher of regulating emotions? And it is clearly our caretakers, our parents, the people that raised us. When a baby cries, we hold it, we rock, we soothe it, we play soothing music. And when a baby falls down, we don't get really excited. We address them and say, it's okay, everything's calm. We're constantly using our bodies and our voice tones and everything to teach children how to calm themselves. There were many years ago, there were children adopted from Romania who had been in cribs from birth and had not had a lot of physical contact and had been left crying for extensive periods of time. It's the first beginning of our understanding of how detrimental it is for a child not to get practice when they get distressed, when they get dysregulated, when they cry, to be calmed and soothed and to learn to self-soothe. I want to give you a little taste of this in this called the still face experiment, where a child, a 1-year-old child, well-regulated child who learns to be calmed by her mother's reactions, has an experience of not getting that practice. I want you to just watch this and then we'll talk about it.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age. Oh, my girl. Oh. And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. Yeah. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Watch how calmly this baby calms down. That's good emotional regulation.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
So the take-home point from that video is that that child had a lot of practice with a parent who was helping them calm down, not, for example, meeting their dysregulated state with a dysregulated state, which happens a lot with stressed out parents, teachers, and other adults. It's really important for the child to get messages from human beings which represent their world, that it's going to be okay. And you might think to yourself, in what situations would parents not be doing this social emotional practice of calming down with the body language and the facial expressions and the tone of voice? Well, if the parent were deeply depressed and unresponsive and the baby was crying without being calmed, or if the parent was herself or himself or the caretaker traumatized and having difficulty managing their emotions themselves, and then overreacting and screaming and yelling at the baby when they were in distress states. There's a lot of reasons why small children, babies, do not get a lot of practice at regulating their emotions, but it is powerful for the detrimental or powerfully helpful for the rest of their life in terms of their ability to stay in well-regulated states. Because as we've talked about in the other sessions, the calmer you stay, the more you have access to your frontal cortex, where you can think clearly, you can think critically, you could make good decisions. So it's a domino effect. If I'm stressed out, I have less access to better thinking, so I continue to make bad decisions. So what is emotional regulation, and why is it so important for us to model and teach it? for all of our children, our students, and even for adults? Well, it's the conscious ability to alter one's emotional state when one sees fit to do so. So I want you to think of you, how you think you are at regulating your emotions. First of all, do you scan do you have an awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations? I mean, right now, are you aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what your body feels like if you're sitting or standing? It's really important for us to check in with those things and not just be on automatic pilot. If you're going to be regulating your emotions and managing your emotions, you need to be aware fully of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what your body is sensing. Do you believe you can alter your emotional state if it's in your best interest to do so? Sometimes we get in very escalated states and we're around our bosses or important people that have power, and it could be very detrimental for us to say or do something in the heat of the moment. So obviously, if we're going to be employed or if we're going to have good social interactions out in the community, we have to be able to not immediately react to whatever emotions and manage them and mitigate them and calm them down. So, do you believe that you can alter your emotional states? I've heard people tell me, watch out, if you trigger me, I just lose it and everybody better duck. And it's kind of a sense that I don't have the ability to control it. So, you better not trigger me. Teenagers say that, adults say that. But if you're going to have emotional regulation, you have to believe that you can alter your state so that it can be better matched and better suited for success in the situation or challenge facing you. And then the third is what exactly are the skills of regulating your emotion? What do you have to do step by step? And we're going to go through those things. So the first thing I want to introduce is Leah Kuyper's concept of brain states or emotional states of a human being. And there's many models out there. This is just one of them, but this model is pretty simple and I use it in a lot of schools. All of us go through these states and none of them are bad in and of themselves, but when situations arise, some of them are not well suited. The blue zone, obviously we've all felt sad or tired or feeling uncomfortable or physically ill or bored or lethargic. This is a low energy state where we're having trouble concentrating and we're foggy. This is a good state if you're about to go to sleep. This is a good state if you're laying on a beach, but it's not a good state if you have to be sharp, if you have to take a test, if you have to really impress people with your knowledge in an interview. So blue state has its benefits, but in some situations it's detrimental. The green zone is the optimum zone. This is when you're happy, calm, you're feeling good, you're focused, you're ready to learn. Some people are more in the green zone at different times of day. But the green zone is the zone we're always seeking to be in because it's pretty good for everything. The yellow zone is when we're starting to get fidgety, a little nervous, a little scared, a little bit out of control. But even the yellow zone is good for a competitive sport, or if you're playing a competitive game, or if you're running around outside with friends. Children at recess are generally in the yellow zone. They're excited. They're a little bit stressed, but they're excited. So again, you can see that the zone is good when there's certain tasks. But if you're in the yellow zone and you have to really take a test, for example, it may not access all of the memory that you need. The red zone is when we've lost it. We're extremely having intense emotions. We're terrified. We might be physically aggressive. We might be destructive, or we might just be really, really, really stressed out. And the red zone is good if your life is in danger, if you're in emergency. So my point in having this is a tool to ask yourself, what zone am I in? And what is the task before me? When I get in my car, I always do a zone check. And if I find myself in the yellow zone or borderline red zone because I just came from a stressful situation, I know that the task before me, driving, requires that I be calmer. So I regulate my body and breathe and calm myself down. So this is a tool that I bring everywhere for people to ask themselves, what zone am I in? Is it well matched to the task before me? How do I reset myself to the green zone to be more successful if need be? And what are my strategies? And that's really what a reset strategy plan is. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So in order for your child or student to learn to really regulate or manage their emotions, the parent or teacher needs to know how to really regulate themselves. So this is the plan, and I'm going to send these to you. But you can, even if you want to, during this training, you can write these things down on a piece of paper if you have one, and a pen or pencil. Um, for adults, it's very simple. What are your triggers? What really irritates or stresses you? And once you are fully aware of what are the key things that really escalate you quickly, like for example, my triggers are that when I'm being ignored, loud noises, uh, anyone who's being condescending or belittling me, um, traffic, especially when it stops dead. These are things that escalate me. So what escalates you? What are the triggers? We need to be aware of them. The second thing, well, is warning signs. How does the stress manifest in your body? And the third thing is, what's the best way you have found to calm your body down? Calming your body down is the key. So I'm going to go through some examples. These are some examples of triggers. You see, I've got not being listened to on this list, number one, because that's being ignored is really irritating to me. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like I'll be talking to my adult children and in a party, and as I'm talking to them, I see their eyes gaze to what I suspect is a more interesting conversation, and it really irritates me. And so it's a trigger. And if I'm not aware of that and don't have a plan for that, I might get snippy or snotty or disrespectful to them, which is not my preferred way of operating. It could be being pressured, being teased, people yelling, some people have tremendous test anxiety. So tests are a trigger, loud noises, things like that. So what are your triggers? Second, what are your warning signs? What is happening in your body? Do you get restless? Do you start pacing? Do you have shortness of breath? Do your shoulders? My signs are my shoulders kind of hunch up, my neck tightens, my jaw tightens. I start talking through my teeth. And these are all signals to me. And being aware of your signals helps you to know that your body is stressed. That'll be your first telltale sign. Before your brain recognizes it, your body will show it. Um, Bouncing legs, I do that sometimes to regulate myself. Uh, you might cry, your heart might be pounding. So what are the physical signs for you that that you're escalated? And the third thing is, what are your strategies? Is it getting away from the thing or person that's stressing you out? Is it going for a walk? Physical activity is fantastic. Is it talking to someone who will listen, a good listener, a good friend? Working out always works for me when I have the opportunity to get on my elliptical or to take a brisk walk or to run or to do yoga. It, it's impossible when your body is in motion for you to be stressed out about something. It really, really helps. You might need to lie down. You might like to be listening to peaceful music. A lot of the rest of this training is about that. So that's the adult plan. So this is the regulation strategy plan or reset strategy plan for children. And this was with, I think, a second or third grader um, that actually completed this. Instead of triggers, I ask, what are some things that upset you? And this child said, when I can't do what I want, when someone lies, when I get blamed for something I didn't do. How can people tell I'm upset replaces what's happening in my body, because we want the child to tell us what they'll look like or feel what they're feeling inside their bodies. This child said, I have a mean face when I'm feeling very stressed. I yell, I stomp, I swear, I break rules. Now, these are some new things that are more tailored towards children. When I'm having a hard time controlling my anger, adult, please don't do this. So the child is actually saying, these are things that I have found really make things worse when you do them. And this child thought talking about the thing that you're upset with me about over and over and over again, giving me a timeout, taking away my toy. Instead, the child is asked, what would you really like me to do? And the child says, leave me alone, let me watch a video or get a drink, let me take a walk. And then the last thing is things I can do on my own to calm down when I'm upset. color, play a game, go on the rocking chair, read my favorite book. I'm recommending that parents talk to their children about ask them children these questions and become experts on when your child becomes dysregulated, how we can A, not trigger them so much, B, help them to have a plan for how they can calm themselves down, and C, really positively reinforce their ability not to, we don't want to hide from strong emotions, but we want to manage them so they don't lead to strong behaviors, which lead to strong consequences, which lead to strong patterns of getting involved in back and forth struggles with your child. So you'll get a copy of this plan. The rest of this training is about a bunch of different ways and strategies for human beings to regulate their emotions. And this one is a big one. I've had entire schools adopt practice to pause because it is the first and crucial thing to do. Pause before judging, accusing, or whenever you're about to react harshly, and you'll avoid doing and saying things you'll later regret. When the cortisol rises in your body, when you're triggered, you want to come at people. And if you promise yourself that you're going to allow 60 seconds before you react, in those 60 seconds, maybe breathe, slow your breathing down, and your cortisol will drop, and you'll be less likely to do something that you're going to end up having to pick up the mess you've made and deal with hurt relationships and deal with damaged relationships. Pausing is the key. Allow a space between stimulus and response. So practice the pause. It has helped me tremendously to learn to just stop before I respond. Somebody says something that really triggers you, instead of jumping at it, breathe. And sometimes the best strategy is to not do anything. Just breathe and let the feeling pass, because we're generally not going to make a brilliant strategic move that we're really pleased with in a highly escalated state. And again, Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, says the quote, "Between stimulus and response, there's a space. Between your child nagging at you and how you respond, there's a space. Between your student refusing to do an assignment, continuing to be disruptive, and your response is a space. In that space, in that pause, is our power to choose our response, not reaction, our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom." Now, Viktor Frankl survived death camps during the Holocaust because he believed that he was watching the most horrible circumstances, but he chose to believe that the world is still a wonderful place, and there are caring people, even though he was surrounded by the horrors of what human beings can do. We can, if he can survive that, we can survive the stressors that trigger us day in and day out by pausing and allowing that space. Here's another thing that I highly recommend. If you could do this with me, just 1 minute, 60 seconds, just follow the instructions as closely as possible. And if intruding thoughts come in, don't worry about it. Just do your best to stay focused.
Close your eyes, and we'll take a few moments to calm your mind and body. Soften your face, your neck, and shoulders. Do your best to fully let go. And turn your attention to the breath, the calming breath, the soothing breath. Take long, slow breaths, full and deep. Breathing in, I am calm. Breathing out, I'm at peace.
I often tell schools to start their day with, oh, we got to turn this back for a second. to start their day with meditation or breathing activity or yoga or an affirmation, something that settles you. When kids come back from recess or kids come back from gym or lunch, or even the hallways in some busy high schools, it's really important to have an activity that brings the body and mind a little bit more serenity, starting an important staff meeting, having a family meeting, um, you know, having a ritual before you eat each meal that brings everybody down will improve the conversation at the meal. I'm really talking about setting your brain for success, setting your body for success in relationships, success in all decision making, success in whatever life is challenging you with. You'll have more access to your faculties if you do these types of things. Here's another one: visualization. You close your eyes and you imagine yourself in your favorite peaceful place, real or imagined. Any place that you find peaceful, relaxing is okay. Some people like the beach. See and feel your surroundings, hear all the sounds, smell all the smells, and just relax and enjoy it. The more you can visualize the details, the more you will benefit from it. And the body scan, you watch your mind with your mind, briefly scan every muscle in your body from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. And what you're doing is you're scanning for stress and tension. If you feel the tension, relax the muscle, relax the shoulders. It's a good way to really get in touch with where the stress is locating in your body. If you calm the body, you calm the mind. Doesn't work the other way around. And then just basically filling the bottom of your lungs first and then add to the top. So belly breathing. And then you breathe out slowly and just feel the tension on the exhales. And then try to empty your mind of all except the sound and feeling and sensations of breathing. And when thoughts arise, you don't battle them or push them out of your mind. You let them float around or hang around, but you're choosing to focus on the here and now, the activity that you're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about self-care, because this is crucial and this is within our power to do. I think we generally take better care of our cars than we do of ourselves. We rarely let our cars run out of gas. We constantly make sure that they're filled. We have meters on our cars that tell us, if there's problems or stressors in the car. We don't usually let them go very long before we repair them because we really don't want to get stuck. But with our bodies, we run it ragged a lot of times. We don't sleep well, we don't eat well, we don't meditate, we don't calm ourselves down. Self-care is within your power. Balance between work and life. Enjoying the small things, staying present, acknowledging your feelings, loving yourself. Those are all key things. So a little video about what self-care is. So I'm going to go through a few 10 tips for self-care. First of all, prioritize sleep. It is crucial that we get enough rest. Obviously, we would like 8 hours, but anything that can approximate that, try to just calm yourself down and not have a lot of screen time before bed and get the healing benefits of a good night's sleep. I struggle with this because I have to do a lot to get myself in a mode to be calm. And to the degree that I cut down screen time, do a little bit of reading before bed, and all of that. But good rest is crucial. Carve out downtime. Our culture, America in particular, doesn't really, we work longer than any other industrialized country in terms of well into our 70s, late 60s and 70s. We take very little vacation time. We get very little time off. We like to multitask. And it's just important that you have some downtime, that there is some separation between work and home. So really have a hard stop when I'm going to stop looking at emails and but if you're constantly doing that, you're constantly triggered and you don't have that downtime. But try to build in micro moments of renewal during the day. Every hour or at least a couple times a day, sit for 1 minute. Maybe watch one of those 1-minute videos. They're all over the internet. They're free. Close your eyes and just imagine the stress draining out of you. Even 30 seconds or a minute every few hours. Get outside, walk around, do something. Try to cultivate realistic optimism. Try to be a glass half full person. Resilient people are optimistic. They have a growth mindset. Remember that challenge and struggle are temporary, but not permanent. Being optimistic is not being Pollyanna or denying true problems. It's just that you're holding the belief that positive change is always possible. And here's the growth mindset that I do a lot of talking about. Instead of why is this pandemic happening? Oh, look at all the things we're not able to do. Look at all the problems that we have. You might change it from what can I learn from this? What are the blessings I have? What are the good things that I have throughout this? Just changing the questions you ask yourself when faced with adversity to what is there for me to learn from this? And I've asked high school students this, and they've said to me, we've learned the importance of friendship. We've learned the importance of slowing down. We've learned the importance of good hygiene. We've learned the importance of keeping your immune system strong. So if there are many lessons to learn, but it requires a growth mindset. Try to anchor in your why. Why are you doing the work you do? Why is it your purpose? Are you working in a profession or a field or doing something that you find meaningful? Raising your family, making the world a better place, being kind, helping people who are struggling. If you think about the why of your job, it gives you more meaning and power. Try to be patient, something I struggle with. Patience is the disposition of the resilient. Be patient with yourself, with your colleagues, with your administrators. Patience has nothing to do with complacency. It's not like, I don't care, I'm not even going to bother. It's more about accepting that we can only control certain things, and the thing we can control is our reactions. And maybe somebody's going on a bit, listen, just relax. Find time to socialize. I'm sorry for the typos. With a coworker or a host. And this is hard these days, but we're coming out a little bit of the pandemic, and now some of us can socialize a little bit more if you're vaccinated and others are vaccinated. So this is kind of old advice, but socializing. I mean, I remember I worked at Rutgers for a while. We were working in cubicles, and everybody would be talking and socializing when they got in the morning for 10 minutes, checking on their day and what happened, shows they watched. And I would be right to work, and I would be like, why are they doing that? Well, there's something to be said for socializing and getting to know some of your fellow coworkers' lives. Try to be your own positive motivational coach. Notice your successes, notice your growth, notice your skills. Stop and give yourself some credit for making it through. Just telling yourself that I've survived this day, I made some good decisions, I didn't lose my temper. You have to be your own kind of motivational coach. And the last thing is ask for help when you're really struggling. Ask colleagues, friends, neighbors, supervisors, mentors, coaches, and partners. Ask for help. People want to help. And a lot of us soldier on, and maybe we're more eager to help others and not ask for help. We see something wrong with it. But it's really important that human beings recognize that we're here to help each other. And help doesn't mean weakness. It means identifying what you need and looking for others to support you is what human beings and social networks do. And you don't want to be isolated with the issue because it becomes magnified. And that's my presentation on resetting regulation strategy plans. So if there are questions, I would be glad to, I'll come out of this now and answer any questions. I don't see anything in the chat, but maybe you're thinking of questions.
Hey, Frank, it's Barb. Not a question really, but a comment. I loved the part about deregulation strategies for kids.
Yes.
And I have a 5-year-old granddaughter who sometimes, gets real pouty and bad moods and all that stuff. And she does, my daughter will say to her, time out to calm down, and now I understand the timeout is not doing her any good. I think the timeout makes her more angry.
Yeah.
And, so I like seeing that. I took a picture of it, sent to my daughter. But yeah, I like that one. Thank you.
Yeah, and that might be a good thing to sit down with the child, even if they're that young, and say to them, what makes you really mad?
Right.
Well, when you
right.
tell me I have to stop playing, and what kind of what are some of the, what do you look like when you're really mad? Well, I scream and I run around and I cry.
Yeah.
Okay. And what don't you want mommy or daddy to do? And I was just in Connecticut working with kindergartners and first graders, and they can do this stuff. They can identify feelings we should sometimes sell them short, but we should start early in really, really helping our children identify their emotions. And the thing I warn parents about is, please don't overreact to tantrums.
Right.
They're not a sign that your child has a mental problem. It's normal developmental stuff. They are just struggling with how to deal with strong emotions, and we should coach them through it and then celebrate at the end of it, saying to them, you were so upset, but I see you're breathing now and you're playing your game and you're just really managing strong feelings, honey, really well. And I don't think there's a better gift you can give children than the gift of learning that their emotions are okay. All emotions are okay. It's how you manage them and what you do with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I
think
know.
we got two questions in. Let me see. What would be a good way to talk to a new parent about excessive use of phone and importance of engagement with a newborn infant?
Well, I think that showing them that still-face experiments, we need young parents, new parents especially, to realize that your child is learning who they are, and they need a lot of practice learning how to manage and understand their feelings. And that's where you need to be present, fully present. Yeah, it's interesting, when I was talking about the fact that my adult sons sometimes trigger me when they're not fully paying attention to me, or they're looking past my shoulder at another conversation, that kind of triggers me. But ultimately, what I have to really focus on is what I'm feeling and how I'm managing my feelings. And I just think that we need to realize that we are training our children how to manage their emotions. And you can't do that training with half your attention to the phone or to the TV. So it's really good times to turn the electronics off and practice, especially with small children. They need it so much. And it's hard. There's a lot of demands, but I would say that what you do with your child early will set the stage for the inner voice that they have and their ability to stay calm and think with their best parts of their brain. And those are important things.
And we got another one. What to do when you and your adult children are struggling with emotion regulation? Should I tell my daughter I'm working with this as a way to explain my behavior?
Like I'm wondering, is that person saying that when the adult is struggling with emotional regulation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I highly recommend to teachers and to parents is, if you're feeling triggered around your children, to tell them, I'm feeling triggered right now. I'm starting to get really stressed out and I don't want to have this conversation in this state. So I'm going to do my plan. And I know that sounds weird, but it would be the best thing for your children, whether they're adults or younger children, to see you owning that you're having strong feelings, showing that you don't want to go to the next level of conversation because you're going to do things that are harmful. Because when you're in an escalated state, you don't want to resolve the issue, you want to win. When you're in an escalated state, you don't want to hear their perspective. You want them to shut up and listen to your perspective. And when we're escalated, we get into fight or flight and we hurt the people we love. So right in front of your children, you might need to take a walk. That's why you need a plan. What is your plan? But usually it's to get away from what's triggering you and use the best strategy to calm your body down. One thing I say in all these talks is, I've never done a really stupid thing or a hurtful thing when I was calm. Every bad social interaction that I've had with adults, with coworkers, with family, has been when I've been escalated. Every terrible decision email that I've let go, hit the send on, has been when I'm in an escalated state. We don't do our best thinking in escalated states. Escalated states are good for survival if your life is in danger or if you have to make a quick reaction to something. But for social interaction, we've got to manage our emotions so that our brains can function optimally and we can make good decisions and have good outcomes.
Okay, and then I think we have two more questions. How do we, when we have our own childhood trauma, which can sneak up on us in a moment, fix the red zone that occurred with our child to alleviate creating trauma for them?
Yeah, that is a really, really good and difficult question, because the most important thing is that you are managing your emotions. So if you've had trauma in your life, or if you've had chronic stress just as detrimental, and you are easily triggered, you're going to react badly with your children. Then you're going to beat yourself up about reacting badly. And it's just going to perpetuate your stress. So it's really important to seriously commit to a body calm down, reset strategy plan. Know what your triggers are, know what your warning signs are, and then start seriously practicing certain body calm down techniques like the ones I suggested, breathing techniques, move away from the trigger, walk, exercise, just have an array of strategies. And it's much better that you walk away and do your strategy, because even just we want to not do the damaging thing that's going to bury you in more problems. But I just think that you're defining the number one reason why parents struggle, because they themselves have emotional needs, regulation issues, trauma issues that make it difficult for them to negotiate the normal stresses of parenting. So they've got to have a plan for themselves, and also a compassionate and forgiving self-talk that says, if you mess up, if you blow up, it's not the end of the world. Human beings are resilient. You can come back, you can apologize, you could recover. And your children will watch you and develop a respect and for how you're owning your feelings and managing them, a forgiveness, because they know you're trying your best. So don't hide your strategies, share them, and maybe they'll see you modeling them and they'll learn to use them themselves. But that's a tough one.
Yeah. And we actually had another question come in, so two more now. Have you encountered a highly anxious parent who is dysregulated and does not own this, but sees the issue in their child's behavior?
Many.
Yeah.
Many. And I don't make light of it. I just think that parents, the number one thing that you have to have in order to change your behavior is an awareness and an ownership. That's the first thing. When I see people not even acknowledging that they're triggering their child, but just not acknowledging how badly the child is responding. I've seen teachers um, triggering children when they're in escalated states, and then the children get written up for what they've done, but nowhere in the write-up does it say, well, I saw them in an escalated state and I decided to provoke them and ask them a million questions, and then they cursed me out. So that's, they don't say what they're doing. So I think that if I just really highly recommend that if you are having terrible outcomes with your children, you stop and ask yourself, what am I bringing to the situation? It's not all my fault, but what can I own? And if they are really not owning it, I highly recommend therapy, where you can have a trusted person where you could maybe share with that person and own it and not feel like that person is going to judge you. Because a lot of times it's trying to protect from being judged, but you've got to have an awareness of what you're doing, and you have to have a forgiveness that you're doing it not because you're a bad person, but because you're in a dysregulated state. Take a film of all my dysregulated states, and you would say, I cannot accept him as an expert in this field. Because everybody has awful states, but it's about recognizing it early and regulating it and getting ourselves to a better mindset.
And then do you have suggestions to help a child with high functioning autism and no safety awareness regulate emotions?
I have a broad suggestion that is for all children, but I think it would be fine with a high functioning child diagnosed with autism. Would be make a conscious effort to ask yourself, I want to grow. In Nurtured Heart, we talk about feeding the flowers, not the weeds. So what we want to do is, when we notice our child is getting upset, we want to try to coach them through, or when they're doing dangerous things, whatever the issue is, whatever we call it the weed behavior, the undesired behavior, we don't want to feed that. We want to feed any behaviors that fall into the category of, that's a good decision, you're being cautious, you're being careful, you're being safe, and really talk about instances of that. When they do something unsafe, or they're taking high risks or doing things that you don't want, you want to not be as talkative about that. You want to redirect them. And if they take any of the redirection, you want to celebrate that. So you basically want to ask yourself, what are the seeds I want to plant, and what are the behaviors I want to grow that will help them make better choices? And a lot of times our parenting focuses on when they're out of bounds. How do we address it? By making them not want to go out of bounds. We need to be noticing when they're doing anything that resembles the desired behavior, and describe it and celebrate it and give them lots of recognition for it. That's the best strategy to develop the skills. Think of everything your children do as skill sets. And in this particular example, the child that you're referring to seems to lack a skill set for being safe. And so we need to really build that skill set. So when we see glimpses of it, reinforce it. And if we teach them and they do it, then celebrate it and grow it. And don't put a lot of emphasis on the mistakes.
Okay, and then actually one more question, and I think that's all of the ones that came in, but how do you approach adults who are pre-contemplation, who are not even aware of dysregulation as a problem?
The way that I would approach them would be to say to them, I've just got this interesting information about what happens in our brain when we get upset and how it affects us. Would you want to, are you interested in it? Do you want to hear any of it? That's what I would say, because most of the time they won't say no. Most of them, they'll say, well, what is it? And then you would share with them, do you know that cortisol gets released in our bodies, and it makes us very impulsive, and it makes our critical thinking diminish, and we're not at our best. And I would then say, what do you think? What do you think about that? Well, they might say, well, when I get really upset, I have done things I regret, but I didn't know it was cortisol, or whatever they say. People in a pre-contemplative state the technique that I'm using is from motivational interviewing, and it basically says always ask people's permission if they are interested in an idea. And if they say yes, they're inviting the idea. And then after you present the idea, then you say, what do you think of it? Which again is you're trying to get their own voice to consider and take the pieces of what you're suggesting. Trying to onslaught convince people pushes them to push back. All I'm going to do is invite you to hear a concept and ask what you think about it. And I'm planting the seeds. That's the best you can do until they have full ownership of looking to change their behavior.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Frank. I know we got a bunch of people writing in the chat about how helpful this is. I think all of these are helpful for us to hear and also just for the children we work with as well. So thank you so much. And everybody, I will be sending out the recording as well as the PowerPoint and handouts. And there'll also be a link to the final trauma series webinar. So if you'd like to register for that one as well, you'll see that in the email.
Thank you, everyone. And if there are additional questions and you send them to me, I'll respond to them and send you a list of answers. If there are more questions in the chat than we got to. Frank,
thank you again. This was really skill building, practical skills that I know I'm going to take a lot of them with me. On April 14th, you will talk about de-escalation skills. Again, how to work with youth, especially with kids, especially and ourselves. So I thank you. Thank everybody for being here. And of course, happy Easter, happy Passover to all of you who celebrate. And see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Happy Easter.